Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we're running through 10 teams who were absolutely annihilated by their rivals. 10. Arsenal. Man United and Arsenal may be located at different ends of England, over 200 miles away from each other. But their rivalry, which comes from years of the two sides holding a duopoly over the Prem, isn't waned by the distance. The bitter rivalry was embodied in the early noughties by Roy Keane and Patrick Vieira, whose personal hatred summed up the two clubs' feelings towards each other. But in 2011, the reigning champions shot the Gunners to pieces, beating them 8-2, their highest defeat since 1896. Robin van Persie captained the humiliated Arsenal side, while Rooney scored an impressive hat-trick in what was an all-time trough for the red half of North London. The following season, Van Persie switched his allegiance to the winning side and dragged Man United to another title win, while Wenger's side finished in an all-too-comfortable fourth place, 16 points behind their rivals. Fergie bid farewell to Old Trafford on a high, while Wenger-out banners were hung all around the Emirates. 9. Internacional. We are going a long way back for this total destruction of the Internacional Reds in 1909. In the most southern state of Brazil, you are either Grêmio or Internacional, in one of the longest-standing rivalries in football. And more recently, the two clubs have been relatively level pegging, with the last 3 head-to-heads being a draw and a win apiece. But just 6 years after Grêmio was founded and the very first year of Internacional's existence, the older team destroyed their newly stated competitors in a huge 10-0 victory, in which the Inter keeper stormed off the pitch in humiliation. The very first Grenal derby established Grêmio's dominance and kicked off a very bitter rivalry between the teams and the fans. As the century moved on, the teams became closer, with the competitive edge being added to the mix of bitterness and hatred, so it's unlikely we will ever get to see the scoreline reach double figures again. 8. Rangers. The Old Firm derby is one of the most colourful in world football, with the blue and green sides of Glasgow first clashing in 1888. The two superpowers of Scottish football have won a combined 102 Scottish League titles between them, and historically, Rangers have been the most successful, with 160 wins out of 406. However, the derby has become somewhat less competitive as nowadays Rangers can't keep up with their biggest rivals. In 2012, the Gers suffered financial collapse and dropped down to the 4th flight, and since, the Green Hoops have swept aside all in their path. But after they took 4 seasons to climb back to the top division, the two sides faced each other, and Celtic's dazzling display stunned the home side as they won 5-1, their biggest ever victory at the Ibrox. Brendan Rodgers praised his team for the impressive performance, which saw them have 19 shots on goal, and was disappointed they didn't score more. Kieran Tierney, meanwhile, took the Man of the Match award, and Caixinha was sacked just 229 days after being appointed, the shortest-running Rangers manager of all time. Proves just how important the Old Firm derby is. 7. Lazio. The derby between Lazio and Roma is said to be the biggest and most brutal in Italian football. The bloody Derby della Capitale has seen rioting, racism and even a death as the ultras of both teams compete off the pitch as much as the sides do on it. Over recent years, Roma have dominated, finishing above their rivals in the last 5 seasons, with an average of 15 points more. Going into the game in 2016, Lazio had won just 5 of their last 22 Serie A games and were 31 points off leaders Juventus. But the 4-1 win to Roma at the Stadio Olimpico was slightly different, as thousands of fans boycotted the match over stricter security sanctions. It didn't prevent the Giallorossis' impressive performance though, taking the majority of possession from their hosts and having double the number of shots on target. The defeat kept Lazio in a mediocre 8th place while Roma secured their Champions League spot. This didn't please the board, and manager Stefano Pioli was shown the exit door. 6. Germany. The international rivalry between England and Germany has been written into history. And with Germany's superior record, with 4 World Cup wins and 3 Euro victories, they were always the favourites over the 3 Lions. This prompted Gary Lineker to say that football is a simple game, 22 men chase a ball for 90 minutes, and at the end, the Germans win. But in 2001, England, under the management of Super Swedes Sven-Göran Eriksson, secured a sensational 5-1 win over the Germans in a World Cup qualifier. After going behind in the 6th minute, a hat-trick from a young Michael Owen, which made him the second England player after World Cup winner Geoff Hurst to score 3 past Germany, and goals from Gerrard and Heskey put England 4 in front. However, while it was short-term glory for England, it was Germany that really benefited. The defeat was so humiliating that Die Mannschaft changed their entire international setup, triggering a change to the whole format that eventually led them to winning the World Cup in 2014. Looks like they were the real winners. 5. Boca Juniors. The Super Clasico between Buenos Aires rivals Boca Juniors and River Plate was named by 442 magazine and the Daily Telegraph as the biggest derby in the world, above El Clasico. Together, the two sides of the Primera Division supposedly make up 70% of the fan base in Argentinian football. The history of the fixture is also relatively even, with 77 draws between the sides and both teams winning 80-something matches each in all competitions, keeping the rivalry extremely competitive. More recently, Boca Juniors, who've produced big names including Sebastian Battaglia and Carlos Tevez, have proved to be more dominant, winning 4 of their last 8 league meetings, with River Plate managing just 1 victory. However, River Plate did manage to enact revenge on their La Boca neighbours when they won 2-0 in 2016. The win gave them some well-craved bragging rights in the city, and the team proved their strength, winning the game after their coach was sent to the stand. 4. St. Pauli 1, Hamburg 0. The scoreline of this German derby may not be the most dazzling, but the effect of this game certainly was. While Hamburg have sat comfortably in the Bundesliga since 1963, the only team in Germany to do so, St. Pauli has long been the forgotten team of the Reeperbahn. Having been relegated to Germany's second division in 2015, avoiding a drop down a flight further by just a point. However, in 2011, during a brief St. Pauli stay in the Bundesliga, the Buccaneers beat their rivals away from home in the fierce local derby, their first victory in 33 years. Having only won 19 times to Hamburg's tally of 59, and coming off 3 losses and 3 draws in their previous 6 matches, St. Pauli were massive underdogs. And the victory was a turning point for St. Pauli, but into the wrong direction. Following the shock win, the club suffered a footballing form of hubris. So pleased with themselves with the victory and sitting pretty in 13th place, the team became complacent. That season they were relegated into the Zweite Bundesliga, and they've stayed there. Without a challenge to make their way back up ever since, their highest finish has been 4th. 3. Tottenham. The competitiveness of London rivals Chelsea and Tottenham has grown a lot more recently, now that both teams are in the fight for the top 4. And in 2016, with Spurs and Leicester fighting for the Premier League crown and Man United settling for the Europa League, English football seemed to belong to a separate universe. But late in May, Chelsea were able to put a stop to their London neighbours. Despite Spurs going into the game on the back of a tremendous season under Pochettino, they couldn't put the game to bed. And their inability to keep hold of their 2-0 lead at Stamford Bridge ended their season, killing their chances of a league win and gifting the Premier League to the greatest outliers of all time, Claudio Ranieri and Leicester City. While Tottenham have since grown into the best team in London, they haven't won the Premier League since 1961, and without any form of silverware, it's a hard claim to defend. So those goals from Cahill and Hazard to match the scoreline not only sparked Jamie Vardy's house party, but also an unlikely celebration from Arsenal fans too. 2. Man United. Man United had been the dominant force in England's second city for the majority of football history, with their reign of power including a record 20 league titles. Man City, on the other hand, have sat in the Red Devils' shadows for years, having only topped the Premier League 4 times. However, after the Sky Blues were taken over by Sheikh Mansour in 2008, a power shift started to slowly take place. In 2010, Alex Ferguson claimed that City were a small club with a small mentality, a comment he'd surely live to regret. City got their revenge the following year by inflicting Man United's worst home defeat since 1955 as they thrashed the champions 6-1 to go 5 points clear at the top. It was also the first time either side had scored 6 in the derby since 1926. Mancini's men delivered an emphatic performance humiliating Alex Ferguson's squad, and at the end of the season it was telling, as goal difference separated the sides at the top. Finally on even ground, the Manchester sides continue their battle over the Premier League now, as Guardiola and Mourinho go head-to-head over the title. However, with City looking superior, perhaps it was this game that rocked the boat and kicked off the dominance shift in Manchester. 1. Real Madrid. And from one Pep Jose competition to the next. The two dominant powers in Spanish football have been clawing at each other for the top spot of La Liga for what seems like forever. However, between 2008 and 2012, the Blaugrana hosted a golden era, which saw them temporarily squash the rivalry and assert dominance over the entirety of Spain. When the two sides met in 2010, Barca had won the league 4 of the previous 6 seasons, 2 under Frank Rijkaard and 2 under Pep, as well as a Champions League victory in 2009. And goals from Xavi, Pedro and David Villa helped to thrash Mourinho's Madrid in a display that not only showed the pure brilliance of Pep's Barca team, but also the new type of football he'd masterminded. The match was a sign of Barcelona's dominance, as Madrid had become so inferior to their biggest rivals. So thanks once again for watching, guys, and if you enjoyed this, why not click on screen right now for another one of our fantastic videos. And as always, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe.